Coming up next on the Jeff Crilley Show, how a man took a lost family recipe and turned it into an empire. His inspiring story is just ahead.
Many are predicting that the worst is yet to come, which is unfortunate, said one person here. Until now, they've enjoyed the reputation of being the nation's icebox.
Watched a burglar in his home this morning by webcam.
As a journalist of over 25 years, stories are what make my world turn.
Reporting live from the Dallas newsroom tonight, Jeff Crilley, Fox 4 News.
But in 2008, I took the jump from my familiar life and started a PR firm from my home.
We're talking about anyone with a camcorder like the one I'm using becomes a television network.
We started slowly growing the company, and we now have over 100 clients, and we've branched into the world of live digital broadcasting. I now own 8 different TV studios and have a huge team, and the stories that I now get to share are sometimes the most important of my life. Life has a funny way of coming around full circle. This is the Jeff Crilley Show. What is that old saying about great fortune is when luck meets opportunity? I am standing next to one of the luckiest men alive, Stephen Sadler, good friend, author, entrepreneur, poet. The list of accolades, I don't know. But I gave the tease that a lost family recipe started all this. Tell me that story.
Well, as I was growing up, my family always talked about this great crumb cake recipe that was in the family. And my grandmother's generation, some of them had made it. My parents' generation and aunts and uncles, they had eaten it. And my generation, we had never seen it because the recipe was lost. And so we always, every holiday when the family got together, somebody would take a stab at it and people would taste it and go, it's good, but it's not the same. And this would go on for years and years. And when the last of my grandmother's generation passed away, my grandmother, when she died, my uncle was living with her, and he said she had a side table with 2 drawers, and you know the drawers, they only go so far and they have like a lock. He said, and I opened the top drawer and I took everything out. He said the bottom drawer was so stuffed full of stuff I couldn't get it out. And he said I put my 2 legs next to it and I pulled, and it broke, the drawer broke, everything flew out. Under the drawer was the recipe.
Oh my goodness.
And so we finally found the recipe. And so at the time, I was working with Renee Vardone, and they gave me the recipe and said, one rule, it goes in a safe deposit box. You don't put it in your nightside table or wherever else. And that's how we found the recipe. But I mean, for years, I heard about this great cake and never knew anything about it.
Now, we've got some video of you that we're going to play now of you assembling one of your famous crumb cakes. The attention to detail, you went out and you actually found the original spices.
I wanted to find, it got me thinking, it said, if this cake came from 400 years ago, where would they have sourced all their ingredients?
Right.
And I found that, cinnamon came from, at the time it wasn't Saigon, but from Asia, it's called Saigon cinnamon now. Another ingredient came from the Madagascar Islands. Another one came from Tanzania. I mean, it was all over the world, and that's what started me traveling around the world to find these ingredients, because I wanted to make the cake as close to the original as I could.
Yes. And it really took off. Then you built a bistro around it.
Yeah, I did.
Tell everybody that story.
I was not one that was interested in cooking at all, which is funny because my mother was Italian, and if you know anything about Italian families, everybody cooks. And my father, who was Austrian, that's where the crumb cake recipe came from, and I would sit in the dining room and say, where's dinner? And everybody else be in the kitchen cooking. But I met Renee Vardone, who was the chef for the Kennedys in the White House. And Renee taught me that cooking and baking was like art. And he would always say, where else can you have a job where you can make something that 20 years later people will say, remember when we had that so-and-so? He said, you can't do that anywhere else. And so I fell in love with the art of cooking, more so with baking. And so I opened up a bistro in New York, and I opened up a bakery. And I had like 70-some different pastries, which for people who are outside of New York, 70-some pastries sounds like a lot. In New York, that's pretty standard. But one of my things was the crumb cakes. And I actually had to have a separate door for those because we had lines outside the bistro all day long. They called the people cakers. And they would wait online for their piece of cake. And all we would do was put a cake, coffee, and they would move on. And I mean, all day long, we did 70 sheet trays, if you know what a sheet tray is, every day, around 70 of crumb cakes.
That's amazing.
So-
And I know you're invited on the different morning shows from
Yeah.
time to time. We
Yeah.
got some video of you on Good Morning Texas a few years ago. You do enjoy being not just the entrepreneur, but the evangelist. I mean, this is a secret recipe. I mean, it's really mouth-wateringly good.
Well, I never wanted to have the best burger. Everybody has that. Everybody has the best this, the best that. So I always, if I was going to do something, I wanted it to be unique.
Yes.
And I knew that if I could replicate exactly how this was done, that I would have something unique. And so that kind of fed into my belief in how exciting this is, how unique it is.
Okay, let's talk about the look and feel of the restaurant. We've got some pictures because I find it fascinating that you chose Forney.
Yeah.
Forney's not known necessarily
no.
as a mecca of sophistication. I mean, you really brought something special to Forney.
Again, I wanted to be different. I didn't want to be the typical place. And, I had looked at Dallas because I live in Dallas area, and I had looked in different areas of where to put my bistro. And I thought, what a challenge would it be to put it in small town America, meat and potatoes town, where I bring, and what I do with my bistro, I travel around the world and I find different dishes and I bring them to this bistro. So every one of my dishes comes from a different country. So what a challenge it would be to put a bistro in a small town America with meat and potatoes and show them what a gastronomical special dish would be that would match my crumb cakes.
Wow.
And I designed the bistro after the great bistros I saw in France and Italy. I wanted them to come in and almost feel like they had left Texas and they had come into another world.
Are you still shipping all over the globe?
Yeah, I ship all over the world. It's really funny. It's interestingly enough, I actually ship now over 30 cakes a month to Afghanistan, to the soldiers, and they came all from one cake.
Goodness.
One cake that a family shipped.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about your book, because I love the title, Quest for the Best, the story of an unlikely chef who built an improbable empire from a lost family recipe.
Right.
Greatest title ever. Tell us what inspired you to write the book.
Well, like I mentioned, when I first got the recipe, I wanted to do it exactly the way they did it. So for me, my quest was at first to find the exact ingredients. And then I wanted to find the finest ingredients. And it's funny because I constantly get people that say, well, you could do it this way and it'll save you this much. And usually that's a death knell for me. That's the end of it, And so I would always find, where is the finest this, where is the finest that. My research of chocolate, I thought, even as a chef, I thought, well, chocolate is chocolate. Well, it's not. There's like hundreds of different types of chocolates. They come from all over the world. They're almost like a wine. When you go and say, what's the finest chocolate? A chocolatier will say, well, what year? A 49 so-and-so from Belize is the finest for that year, but a 72 so-and-so from this country is the finest. And so there's so many different variables. And so in my bistro, we always source the finest ingredients. A lot of places will say, this is my price range, and so we have to build to that price. I build to the finest ingredients, I make a fair profit, and that's the price. And if it works for you, great, and if it doesn't, but I'm not going to cut a corner and make it cheaper in any other way.
I know you're a very popular speaker when we're not social distancing and having events. When you speak, are you speaking about kind of like the art form of whatever you do? I mean, if you're a street sweeper, may the gods look down and bow. There goes a great street sweeper.
Right. My dad had this term. He would always, there were two things he always said. He would say, anytime, the very term that's good enough means it wasn't. Okay, so I've always used that as there's always something else I can do to make it special. In the bistro, I mean, everyone said, well, you should have these kind of chairs because they wear longer. Well, I have Carrera leather chairs. They don't wear as long, but when you sit in them, they're the finest you can sit in.
Yes.
Okay, and then or you could do this because it'll last longer and better upkeep. But I'm always looking for how to. And in speaking, what I talk to a lot of groups about is how to separate yourself from everyone else. And everyone takes care of the big stuff. The people who take care of the little things are the ones that stand out.
Yes.
Things like My salt and pepper shakers come from the Museum of Natural Art. Wow. My forks are real heavy because most restaurants say, well, I'll do great, this will be a great decoration, but we can cheap out on the forks. People, they don't know, they don't say this was a great fork, but what they do say is, I don't know why, but that place just is special. I can't kind of put my finger on it, but it's different than any other place, and it's all those little things. So I speak to a lot of entrepreneurs about how to separate yourself from everyone else.
And I know one of the topics that you're doing a lot of coaching on and mentoring on is DISC.
Right.
That all employees are not the same.
Yeah.
And especially during a pandemic when half of the workforce is working from home, you can
Right.
have a player who comes into the office every day and is a rock star, and then all of a sudden that same player is shriveling up and dying at home.
Right. And that comes back from my college days. When I first went to college, I majored in psychology, and I learned about the DISC, and basically what that is there's 4 personality types basically in the world, and everyone falls under one with some variables. And if you can learn to identify the personality type you're dealing with, whether it be an employee or the boss, whether it be a customer or a supplier, yes, you can adjust your personality to deal with them better. And what's happened is I've gotten a lot of speaking engagements for companies who want to, we're having problems now, we're doing Zoom meetings.
Sure.
And some people are more involved and some aren't. Well, I can sit with them and say, well, this personality type will be more involved, this one won't. So you'll need to do this for these type of people, yes, and you'll adjust this way for these type. Or I'm getting a lot of engagements from organizations that, because you have people stuck at home now that were never home altogether. And so there's clashes.
Yes.
So if you learn, well, that person is a D, and they're never going to see it the way I do because I'm a C, I have to adjust knowing that. So yes, you don't change them, you change you to balance to them. And it makes a giant difference. And it's been a really big thing for me now. I've been doing more of that than I've been doing of anything else. In fact, I'm almost never at my bistro now. I'm usually on engagements with organizations, churches, corporations on, if you're talking to a client, you need to know, identify that client. What is his personality, his or her personality type, so you can then say, well, I know what's going to be important to them, so I have to highlight that area.
Yes.
Not what's important to me,
yes,
because this is my personality. I have to highlight what's important to them.
Well,
and it makes a big difference.
And I love it how your life and all of your experiences have led you to this point, and you're giving back and sharing the wisdom. We unfortunately are out of time, so we're going to put both websites up. Crumbzz is your bistro and
right,
your magic recipe they can order on that website, and then
right,
jstephensadler.com.
It's jstephensadler.com or Techmar USA, which is my company that's for my speaking engagements.
Outstanding.
Right.
Well, you are such an inspiration and
Thanks,
a
I
good
appreciate
friend,
that.
and I'm so thrilled that you came in.
Glad to be here.
You bet.
Enjoyed it.
And that's it for now. We'll see you next time.